12 hours before Victor Moretti put my real name on a table and called me a federal agent. I still believed the woman who controlled my mission would be the one person who would never let me die. I was wrong. For 3 years, I had lived as Mason Reed, a former military logistics contractor, a man with gambling debts, a man willing to transport illegal shipments if the price was high enough. That man did not exist, but Victor Moretti believed he did. And that was the only reason I had survived inside his organization for 3 years. Victor was not the kind of criminal who trusted easily. He changed meeting locations every few days. He tested new members with fake information. He created conflicts between his own people just to see who would reveal weakness. Most undercover agents never got close enough to see his real operation. I did, and tonight was supposed to be the final step. The master ledger. That was what we had been chasing for almost 4 years. A single digital record connecting Victor's network of money laundering, illegal weapons shipments, and political corruption. Once I confirmed the ledger existed, the FBI would move. No more waiting. No more pretending to be someone I wasn't. After 3 years of living as Mason Reed, I would finally become Ethan Carter again. At least, that was the plan. At 11:07 that morning, my encrypted phone vibrated. I was sitting inside an abandoned delivery truck outside a warehouse district, watching Victor's men move equipment through a side entrance. The message came from Claire Carter, my supervisor, my wife. Proceed with tonight's meeting. I read the next lines twice. Extraction canceled. Do not contact secondary teams. My expression didn't change, but my instincts immediately reacted. Something was wrong. The original plan was different, because Victor had become suspicious recently. 2 members of his organization had disappeared within a week. A third had suddenly stopped answering calls. The FBI believed Victor was searching for an informant. The safest choice was to postpone the meeting, not remove my extraction team. I opened the secure communication channel. Claire answered almost immediately. Deputy Section Chief Carter. Not Ethan. Not husband. Not even my last name. The tone was professional, cold. She was reminding me that this was an operation. Why was extraction canceled? I asked. Operational adjustment. Based on what intelligence? A short pause. Information above your current clearance. I looked at the message on my phone again. I'm the agent entering Victor Moretti's inner circle tonight, and I'm the person responsible for making sure this operation succeeds. Her voice was calm, too calm. For 7 years, Claire had been the person I trusted most. Before she became my boss, she was the agent who stood beside me during the cross-state kidnapping task force. That was where we met. She was the first person who understood how I thought. The first person who knew how much I hated leaving things unfinished. She once told me that my greatest strength was also my biggest weakness. I cared too much about completing the mission. Maybe she was right, because over the years, the mission slowly took everything else from us. Anniversaries missed, dinners canceled, birthdays celebrated through video calls. Our marriage became a collection of short conversations between classified briefings. Claire once told me she felt like she was married to a man who was always somewhere else. I never knew how to answer that, because she wasn't wrong. But I never thought that distance could turn into something worse. The meeting was supposed to be postponed. I said, the assessment changed. Who changed it? I did. The answer came quickly, too quickly. I stared through the windshield. Rain tapped against the glass. Claire, Victor is actively looking for a leak. I know. Then you know sending me in without extraction is dangerous. I know the risks. Do you? Silence. For a moment, I thought I heard hesitation. Then it disappeared. I'm your supervisor. Ethan. A pause. Not your wife. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, because they sounded like she had practiced saying them. I need confirmation the backup team remains available. They have been reassigned. To where? Baltimore. That's almost 2 hours away. I'm aware. My hand tightened around the phone. Authorize another team. No. One word. No explanation. No discussion. Every instinct I had built over 15 years told me to walk away. Abort the mission. Disappear before entering that warehouse. But undercover work was built on uncertainty. and Claire knew more about the operation than anyone. She had reviewed every security measure. She had personally approved my emergency protocols. If she believed I needed to continue, then there had to be a reason. At least, that was what I told myself. Claire, what if something changed? Tell me. Her voice softened slightly, just for a second. Then the professional mask returned. Complete the mission. Ethan. The connection ended. I sat there for another minute, thinking, analyzing, looking for the missing piece. But I couldn't find it, so I checked my equipment. The pistol beneath my jacket. The emergency transmitter hidden inside my boot. The encrypted backup device sewn into my clothing. Everything I needed if something went wrong. Then I started the engine. Victor Moretti's warehouse sat beside the river, surrounded by abandoned factories. The location was familiar. The people were not. The first thing I noticed was the guard at the entrance. He wasn't one of Victor's usual men. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Normally, Victor's people were loud. Arguments, laughter, music. Tonight, there was nothing. Every person inside watched me walk in. Nobody smiled. Nobody joked. Nobody looked away. I slowed my breathing. Something had changed. The door behind me closed. A lock clicked. Victor stood in the center of the warehouse. He smiled when he saw me. Phones. One by one. Everyone placed their phones on the table. I did the same. Victor watched carefully. Not at my hands. At my reaction. That was when I understood. This wasn't a meeting. It was a test. He walked closer. Slowly. Then placed one hand on my shoulder. Exactly where an old injury still bothered me whenever the weather changed. His smile remained. Interesting, he said. I looked at him. Victor leaned closer. Tonight, Mason. He paused. We're not going to discuss business. The warehouse became completely silent. Victor's eyes locked onto mine. We're going to talk about who you really work for. The first thing I learned about Victor Moretti was that he never rushed to kill someone. Not because he was merciful. Victor didn't believe in mercy. He believed information was more valuable than revenge. A dead enemy could tell him nothing. A frightened enemy could reveal everything. That was why I was still alive. The warehouse doors closed behind me. The sound echoed through the empty building. I counted. 3 seconds. 4, 5. The lock finished engaging. I didn't move. Fear was useful. Panic was not. Victor watched me carefully from across the room. He was waiting for something. A reaction. A mistake. Anything. But after 15 years as a federal agent, I knew better than to give someone like Victor what he wanted. He smiled slightly. Mason Reed. He said my undercover name slowly, like he was testing how it sounded. You know what I find interesting? I remained silent. Victor walked toward the table where everyone had placed their phones. Most people, when they realize something is wrong, they look for an exit. He picked up one phone. They look at doors. Another. They look at weapons. He placed it down. But you. He looked directly at me. You looked at the people. I said nothing. Victor smiled. That's not how a criminal thinks. The room became quieter. The men around him shifted slightly. Not nervous. Interested. Victor had already made his decision. He didn't know everything yet. He was still confirming. That was my only advantage. What exactly are you trying to prove? I asked. Victor laughed softly. Good. You're still pretending. He walked behind one of his men. A younger guy, maybe 25. The man's hands were tied. A bruise covered one side of his face. Victor placed a pistol on the table. This man stole from me. The young man immediately shouted. No, boss. I swear. Victor raised his hand. The room went silent. I want you to kill him. I looked at him. The request was simple. Too simple. This was not about the man in front of me. It was about me. A loyalty test. A real member of Victor's organization would pull the trigger without hesitation. An undercover agent would hesitate. And hesitation was dangerous. I picked up the gun. The young man's eyes widened. I could feel every person watching me. Every breath. Every movement. Aimed. Then the lights suddenly flickered. Once. Twice. The warehouse went dark. Someone shouted. What happened? A second later, the emergency lights turned on. I fired. The bullet hit the wall inches away from the man's head. The room exploded into movement. 2 guards grabbed their weapons. Victor's men shouted, but I had already dropped the gun. The lights failed. I said calmly. Nobody answered. Victor stared at the bullet hole, then looked back at me. A normal criminal would have panicked. A normal criminal would have complained about the timing. I didn't, because I knew something. Victor had created the darkness himself, and he wanted to see whether I would use it. A few seconds passed. Then Victor smiled. Interesting. He didn't sound disappointed. He sounded impressed. The second test came 30 minutes later. Victor moved everyone to another location. A different warehouse, different entrance, different security. I noticed immediately, because it was too clean, too intentional. He wasn't moving because of danger. He was moving because he wanted to see if anyone outside knew where we were going. My original FBI surveillance team should have been monitoring Victor's main warehouse. But this location was outside our expected range. If someone inside the FBI had leaked information, they would have known enough to redirect Victor, but not enough to make him careless. That thought bothered me, because whoever gave Victor information understood our operation. Not the public details, not the rumors, the classified details. I tried contacting the backup channel. No response. I tried the emergency route. Access denied. Again, I stared at the screen. For the first time that night, I felt something colder than fear, confusion, because the system didn't simply fail. Someone had changed my authorization. Someone with clearance. Someone inside. Victor noticed my expression. You look disappointed. I put the device away. I'm calculating. About what? Who betrayed your organization? Victor laughed. Still protecting your story. He walked closer. You know what I like about people like you. I watched him. You always believe there must be a logical explanation. He stopped in front of me. Even when the truth is standing right in front of you. I didn't answer, because he was right about one thing. There was a logical explanation. My account could have been compromised. Someone could have stolen Claire's credentials. A hacker could have accessed restricted systems. Anything was possible. Anything except one thing. I couldn't believe Claire would do it. Not yet. The third test came quietly, almost casually. Victor sat across from me with a cup of coffee. No weapons, no threats, just conversation. You know, he said, I researched Mason Reed. I looked at him. Everyone has a history. Of course. He took a sip. But your history has some interesting gaps. My heartbeat stayed steady. Everyone has things they don't talk about. Victor smiled. Especially a man with a shoulder injury from 5 years ago. The warehouse seemed to become colder. I didn't move, didn't react. But inside, every alarm activated. My left shoulder. 5 years ago. A classified operation. A wound that was never reported publicly. Only medical records. Only personnel files. Only people with FBI clearance could access that information. Victor leaned forward. Funny thing. That injury doesn't match Mason Reed. A pause. It matches Ethan Carter. For the first time that night, I stopped wondering if Victor was suspicious. He was certain. The question was no longer whether my identity had been exposed. The question was how. Because Victor didn't have pieces of information. He had everything. My alias, my mission, my injury, my security protocols, my extraction procedures. Someone had handed him my entire file. And only a very small number of people had access to that, including the person who approved my mission, including the person who promised me she would bring me home, Claire. No, I rejected the thought immediately. There had to be another explanation. There had to be. Victor stood up, then slowly walked toward a table. He picked up a tablet. I think it's time you see something. He turned the screen toward me. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the timestamp, the location, the security footage. A woman walking through a restricted FBI corridor. Black suit, badge access, a familiar face. My breath stopped, because on that screen was Claire Carter, entering the classified archive room. The screen stayed frozen for several seconds. Claire Carter, walking into the FBI classified archive room. I stared at the image. Not because I didn't recognize her. Because I did. I knew the way she walked, the slight tilt of her shoulders when she was thinking, the way she kept her left hand close to her body when she carried confidential files. I knew everything about that woman. I had spent 7 years sleeping beside her. I had trusted her with my life. And now I was watching her enter the place where my death sentence had probably been created. Victor watched my face carefully. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He already saw the damage. Still looking for another explanation. His voice was quiet. I didn't answer, because answering meant admitting something I wasn't ready to accept. Victor picked up the tablet. You know what separates professionals from amateurs. He turned off the screen. Professionals don't ask whether something hurts. He placed the tablet on the table. They ask what the evidence means. I looked at him. Where did you get that? Victor smiled. That's your first question. He leaned against the table. Not why is my wife inside a classified archive. Not what did she take. Not who else knows. He paused. Interesting. I remained silent. Victor had spent years building his reputation because he understood human weakness. He wanted anger. He wanted emotion. He wanted me to lose control. I refused to give him that. What do you want? I asked. From you. Victor shook his head. No. From you. I already know enough. He looked at the men around him. I want to know how long you can keep pretending. Then he pressed a button on the tablet. An audio file started playing. First, there was only background noise. A coffee machine, office footsteps, then a woman's voice. Claire. My body became completely still. I need access to the Moretti investigation files. A man's voice answered. Why? The voice belonged to someone I didn't recognize. Claire sounded calm. Professional. The investigation has expanded. I need to review possible connections. A pause. Then the man asked, are you requesting access because of the investigation? Silence. A second. 2 seconds. Then Claire answered, yes. Victor stopped the recording. That was the first lie. I looked at him. She accessed your file before she accessed the criminal investigation. My expression didn't change, but inside, something shifted. The first crack. Not enough to destroy everything. Just enough to let the truth enter. Victor continued. She didn't give us your identity immediately. He walked slowly around me. That would have been too obvious. She started small. He restarted the audio. Another recording. Different day. Different location. Claire's voice again. His current alias is Mason Reed. My breathing stopped. Victor watched me. The name you spent 3 years building. The recording continued. A man's voice. Ryan. I knew immediately. Not because I had met him, because I had investigated him. Ryan Brooks, real estate developer, suspicious financial connections. A man my team had been quietly examining. The same man Claire had told me was just an old friend. Ryan's voice came through the speaker. Are you sure? Claire answered. Yes. He's undercover. A pause. Then Ryan asked the question that changed everything. If Victor finds out, does he kill him? Silence. Longer this time. I closed my eyes, because I already knew the answer mattered. Claire spoke. Only if he keeps investigating you. The room went silent. Victor stopped the recording. Do you understand what that means? I didn't respond, because I did. She knew. She knew exactly what danger I was facing, and she still convinced herself it wouldn't happen. Victor moved closer. She didn't say, I don't know. She didn't say, I made a mistake. She said, only if he keeps investigating you. His eyes locked onto mine. She was negotiating your survival. My hands tightened, but my voice remained calm. That proves she was protecting someone. Victor nodded. Exactly. He smiled slightly. Someone who wasn't you. The next recording was shorter, but it hurt more. Ryan's voice. You need to move the extraction team. Claire immediately answered. No. I can't do that. You know what happens if this gets out. A pause. Claire lowered her voice. Don't threaten me. Ryan laughed. I'm not threatening you. I'm reminding you. Your entire career disappears if people know what happened between us. I felt something cold spread through my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Disbelief. Victor watched me carefully. She could have stopped there. He pressed pause. She could have reported him. She could have protected you. But she didn't. The recording continued. Claire's voice became quieter. How long? Ryan answered. Long enough. What does that mean? It means he won't be able to trace anything back to you. Another pause. Then Claire said, I'll handle the extraction. The audio ended. No dramatic confession. No emotional apology. Just a decision. A choice. Victor sat across from me. Do you know what I find interesting, Ethan? I looked at him. You spent 3 years pretending to be someone else. You lied to criminals. You manipulated people. You survived because you understood that information is power. He leaned forward. But when it came to your wife, his voice lowered. You stopped analyzing. I didn't answer, because that was the truth I hated most. I could read criminals. I could predict killers. I could identify deception from a stranger's breathing pattern. But Claire was the one person I never considered a threat. Victor stood up. She wasn't hacked. She wasn't forced. She wasn't careless. Each sentence landed harder. She entered the system. She downloaded your file. She gave us your identity. She moved your protection away. He looked at me. 5 choices. 5 chances to stop. She made all 5. For several seconds. I heard nothing. Not the guards. Not the warehouse. Not even my own breathing. Only one sentence Claire had said months ago. No matter what happens, Ethan, I'll bring you home. I remembered the night she said it. My final briefing before entering Victor's organization. She had held my hand. She had looked directly into my eyes. I promise. I believed her. That was the worst part. I believed her. Victor picked up the tablet again. There is one more thing you should hear. I looked at him. The screen changed. A video file appeared. Ryan and Claire. Together. Not talking about me. Not talking about the investigation. Talking about what would happen after. Ryan smiled. Once this is over, you and I can finally start again. Claire didn't answer immediately. Then she said, what about Ethan? Ryan laughed. A cold, careless laugh. He won't know. Victor turned off the screen. He never loved her. The statement was simple, but accurate. Ryan had never chosen Claire. He had chosen what she could give him. Access, information, protection. And Claire had destroyed the one person who truly protected her. Victor stepped behind me. The warehouse door opened. 2 men entered. They grabbed my arms. I didn't fight. Not yet. Because fighting before the right moment was something amateurs did. Victor watched as they pulled me toward the back of the warehouse. Where are you taking me? I asked. Victor looked at me. The place where people go when they stop being useful. A cold wind entered through the open door. Outside, a vehicle waited, and beyond it, a dark patch of empty ground. A hole already prepared. Victor leaned closer. You spent 3 years protecting a woman who gave you away in 10 minutes. He smiled. Now let's see how long you survive without her. The men dragged me forward. And for the first time since this began, I stopped wondering whether Claire had betrayed me. I already knew. She had. The hole was waiting for me. I could see it through the open warehouse door. 3 meters wide. Freshly dug. Prepared before I even knew Victor Moretti suspected me. That was the part most people would never understand. The hardest moment for an undercover agent was not being discovered. It was realizing the enemy had prepared for your discovery. Victor had not reacted. He had planned. The men dragged me across the concrete floor. My hands were still tied behind my back. My left shoulder burned. The old injury had started screaming again. 5 years ago, that shoulder almost ended my career. Tonight, it might end my life. Victor followed slowly behind us. He wasn't in a hurry. He never was. People like Victor believed time belonged to them. That was their weakness. They thought everyone else was waiting. They never considered that someone might be counting. Steps, distances, seconds. I counted everything. Guard 1, 6 meters behind me. Guard 2, holding a rifle, 4 meters to the left. Emergency exit, blocked. Power panel, 20 feet away. Fuel storage, near the eastern wall. Old warehouse, old systems, old mistakes. Victor stopped. Bring him back. The men pulled me away from the hole. Not yet. He didn't want me dead. Not yet. He still wanted information. That gave me time. The interrogation room was nothing more than an abandoned office. A metal chair, a wooden table, one camera in the corner. No windows, no obvious exits. Victor sat across from me, a cup of coffee in his hand. Almost peaceful. That was always the most dangerous kind of person. The ones who could discuss murder while drinking coffee. You know what disappoints me? I looked at him. You. Victor smiled. No. He took a sip. The FBI. He placed the cup down. You train people like you to hide. You teach them to lie. You teach them to sacrifice everything for a mission. He leaned forward. But nobody teaches you what happens when the person closest to you becomes the threat. I said nothing. Victor watched my face. You still don't want to believe it. I kept my expression unchanged. A mistake many interrogators made was assuming silence meant weakness. Sometimes silence was the only thing keeping you alive. Victor tapped the tablet. Claire's picture appeared. My wife. My superior. The person who approved every stage of my mission. She knew your extraction schedule. He tapped again. She knew your emergency channels. Again. She knew exactly how long you had before Victor Moretti discovered you. He looked at me. And she still let you walk inside. My jaw tightened. Only slightly. But Victor noticed. Of course he noticed. You see. He smiled. That's the first real reaction I've gotten. I looked away. Not because I was breaking. Because I was thinking. Victor wanted me angry. Anger made people careless. He wanted me emotional. Emotion created mistakes. I had spent 15 years learning one thing. The moment someone controls your emotions, they control your decisions. So what happens now? I asked. Victor leaned back. Now. He smiled. You tell me everything. How many agents are watching me? Who else is undercover? When does the FBI move? I looked at him. And if I refuse? Victor glanced toward the door. You already know. The first hour was pressure. The second hour was pain. Not enough to make me unconscious. Enough to make my body weaker. Victor understood something important. Broken people talk, but exhausted people make mistakes. He wasn't trying to make me confess. He was trying to make me reveal something accidentally. A name, a location, a reaction, anything. So I gave him something, just not what he wanted. There are 3 teams, I said. Victor looked up. Where? One is monitoring financial activity. One is tracking shipments. And one is waiting for confirmation. He studied me. Names. I shook my head. That's not how the operation works. A lie, mixed with truth. The most believable information was never completely false. Victor asked questions. I answered carefully. Enough to keep him interested. Not enough to damage the investigation. Every minute he spent questioning me was another minute alive. And every minute alive was another chance. Around midnight, I noticed something. A guard changed shifts. 8 steps, then 12, then a pause. The second guard always checked the eastern wall. Because the emergency generator was there. Interesting. I remembered something from my first month undercover. Victor had purchased this warehouse through a fake construction company. The building was old, cheap, modified quickly, which meant the security looked impressive. But underneath, weak points, old fuel lines, manual switches, systems that nobody bothered replacing. Everyone looked at the cameras. Nobody looked at the building itself. That was why Victor was dangerous, but not perfect. Nobody was. At 2:17 a.m., my opportunity arrived. A guard entered carrying water. He placed the bottle on the table, then turned away for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That was all I needed. My fingers moved slightly. Hidden inside my sleeve was a small piece of metal. Not a weapon. A tool. Something every undercover agent carried. Something nobody noticed because it looked useless. The guard returned. I stopped moving. Minutes passed. Then the warehouse lights flickered. Once, twice. The same trick I had used earlier. Except this time, I was the one creating it. The emergency power system activated. The room went dark. Someone shouted. What happened? Another guard moved toward the control panel. exactly as expected. I twisted my wrist. The restraint loosened. Not completely. Enough. I moved. Fast. Silent. Years of training replaced fear with instinct. I grabbed the guard's radio, hit the emergency frequency, then ran. Not toward the exit, toward the fuel line, because the only way to disappear was to make everyone believe there was nothing left to find. The explosion was smaller than people would imagine. No giant fireball, no Hollywood moment, just enough damage, enough smoke, enough confusion. The emergency lights died. The warehouse disappeared into darkness. I moved through the smoke. The river was 50 meters away. My shoulder screamed. My breathing became harder. Behind me, people were shouting, "Find him! Check the exits! He's still inside!" I reached the drainage channel. The water was freezing. I jumped. For several seconds, I couldn't feel anything. Then the current pulled me away from the warehouse, away from Victor, away from Claire. I held onto consciousness as long as I could. But before darkness took me, one image appeared in my mind. Not Victor, not Ryan, Claire, her finger pressing the button, rejecting my emergency call. The person who was supposed to bring me home was the person who closed the door. The next morning, FBI headquarters released an official statement. Special Agent Ethan Carter, missing during undercover operation, presumed dead. The report was signed electronically. Authorization confirmed. I stared at the screen from the small boat where I had been rescued. My hands were shaking, not because I was alive, because I saw the name at the bottom of the document. The person who approved my death. The person who told the world I was gone. Claire Carter. My wife. My handler. My executioner. And that was when I made my decision. Ethan Carter was dead, but the man who knew the truth was still alive. The first thing I heard was the sound of waves. Not voices, not sirens, not gunshots, just water, cold, heavy, endless. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. Every breath hurt. My left shoulder felt like it had been crushed under concrete. My hands were numb. My clothes were soaked. I tried to move. Pain immediately answered. That was when I remembered. The warehouse, the explosion, the river, Claire. The last image in my mind was not Victor Moretti. It was her, my wife, the person whose job was to bring me home, the person who decided I wouldn't. I opened my eyes. A wooden ceiling appeared above me, old, cracked, moving slightly with the rhythm of the boat. A small fishing boat, not a hospital, not an FBI safe house, not somewhere Claire could find me. A man was sitting beside the bed, probably in his 70s. Gray beard, old jacket, hands covered with years of work. When he noticed my eyes open, he stood immediately. "Don't move." His voice was rough. "You've been unconscious for almost 2 days." I tried to speak. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Where?" The man poured water into a cup. "Somewhere nobody was looking." He handed it to me. "I found you floating near the drainage channel." He looked at my injuries. "You were lucky." Lucky. That word almost made me laugh. I had spent 15 years chasing criminals, survived shootings, bomb threats, undercover missions, and the person who almost killed me was the woman who promised to protect me. "What's your name?" he asked. I hesitated. Old habits. Never reveal information unnecessarily. Then I remembered. Ethan Carter was dead. Mason. I gave him my undercover name, the name that was supposed to disappear with me. The old man nodded. "Well, Mason." He pointed toward the door. "You almost died." I looked outside. The ocean stretched endlessly. For the first time in 3 years, I was not being watched, but I was not free either, because I knew something. If Victor believed I survived, he would finish the job. If Claire believed I survived, she would erase everything connecting her to my death. And that meant one thing. Couldn't come back. Not yet. 3 days later, I contacted Marcus Hale. Not through FBI channels. Not through official systems. Those were the first places Claire would look. Marcus was different. He worked for internal affairs. Independent, careful, impossible to pressure. I used an old emergency communication method. one that only a handful of senior agents knew. The call lasted 11 seconds. Code 7. Silence. Then, repeat. Code 7. Another pause. Identify. I gave him the phrase. A phrase created after a previous internal corruption case. A phrase meaning, the agent contacting you is supposed to be dead. The line went quiet. Then Marcus spoke. Ethan. For the first time in days. I heard someone say my real name. Yes. His breathing changed. Not much, but enough. Marcus was trained. He knew what that meant. Where are you? Somewhere safe. Who knows you're alive? No one. Another pause. Then he asked, does Claire know? I closed my eyes. That question hurt more than I expected. She signed the death report. Silence. Longer this time. Marcus finally said, then you cannot return. I know. No. His voice became sharper. You don't understand. If Claire is involved, this is no longer just a failed operation. She controls the records. She controls the narrative. If you appear alive now, they will know exactly what happened. I looked at the ocean. I need evidence. Marcus answered immediately. Not revenge. Evidence. I said nothing, because he was right. The moment I turned this into personal revenge, I lost. Claire wanted me emotional. Victor wanted me angry. Ryan wanted me reckless. I couldn't give any of them that. Keep me dead, I said. Marcus exhaled. You understand what you're asking? Yes. You will lose your identity. I already lost it. Another silence. Then Marcus said, send me everything you have. The world needs to believe Ethan Carter is dead. I looked at my hands, the hands that had spent years protecting Claire. Good, because I need them to keep talking. 2 weeks later, I watched my own funeral, not from the back row, not hiding behind sunglasses, from a small screen in an abandoned office Marcus arranged. The strangest thing about watching your own funeral was seeing how many people were willing to explain your life after you were gone. My colleagues stood in silence. Some looked angry, some looked broken, some looked guilty. And then, Claire walked forward, black suit, perfect posture, controlled expression, the same woman who could command an entire FBI division without raising her voice, the same woman who refused my emergency call. She stood in front of everyone, and she cried, I lost my husband. Her voice cracked perfectly, almost perfectly. Ethan wasn't just my partner. He was the bravest person I knew. I stared at the screen, not because I didn't believe she was sad. That was the worst part. Somewhere inside her, I knew there was still a part of Claire Carter that loved me. But love didn't save me. Love didn't answer my emergency signal. Love didn't stop her from opening my file. She continued. He believed in justice. He believed in protecting people. And I hope everyone remembers him that way. The room applauded. People hugged her. Someone handed her tissues. Everyone saw a grieving wife. Nobody saw the woman who had signed my death sentence. Then the ceremony ended. The cameras stopped. The guests left. And Claire walked back into her office. The woman who had just buried me opened her computer. The tears disappeared. Her face changed. Cold, focused, professional. She accessed the system. First, she deleted the archive request. Second, she modified the operation timeline. Third, she changed the final report, the report that would explain my death. I watched the screen, my own death certificate, my own failure report, my own reputation being destroyed. According to Claire Carter, Ethan Carter died because he ignored orders, because he acted alone, because he compromised the mission. I sat there silently. The pain in my shoulder was nothing compared to what I felt. She didn't just kill me. She was trying to make sure nobody respected the man she killed. That was the moment something inside me changed. Before today, I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know if any part of our marriage was real. Now, I stopped asking, because the answer didn't matter anymore. The woman I loved had made her choices. Now I would make mine. I turned to Marcus. Don't announce I'm alive. He looked at me. Then what are you going to do? I watched Claire's name disappear from the screen. Let them believe the dead can't fight back. Marcus stayed silent. And Ethan? I looked at my reflection. A stranger stared back. Tired, injured, different. Ethan Carter is dead. I paused. But the man who watched them bury him is still alive. And for the first time since Claire betrayed me, I wasn't trying to survive. I was preparing to hunt. The dead have one advantage. Nobody watches them. Nobody worries about what they are thinking. Nobody expects them to move. For 3 years, I lived inside Victor Moretti's organization. I learned how he trusted people. I learned how he punished betrayal. I learned what scared him more than prison. Losing control. That was the weakness of every powerful criminal. They didn't fear enemies. They feared uncertainty. And now, I was uncertainty, because Victor Moretti believed Ethan Carter was dead. Claire Carter believed Ethan Carter was dead. Ryan Brooks believed Ethan Carter was dead. But they were wrong. The man they buried was watching them. Marcus sat across from me in the small safe house. A folder was placed between us. Inside were photographs, transaction records, operation files, security reports, everything connected to Victor's organization. "You understand what you're doing?" Marcus asked. I looked at him. "Yes." "No." He shook his head. "You understand the objective, not the consequences." I didn't answer. Marcus continued. "You are not going after Claire because she broke your heart. You are not going after Ryan because he stole your marriage. You are going after a criminal network." I nodded. "That's why they can't know I'm alive." Marcus looked at the folder. "Then we do this correctly." He opened the first page. Evidence, not revenge. I looked at the names. Victor Moretti, Ryan Brooks, Claire Carter. 3 people, 3 different fears, 3 different weaknesses, and 3 different reasons to destroy each other. The first move was Victor. Victor didn't trust anyone, but he trusted money, especially his money. During my time undercover, I learned something important. Criminal organizations were not held together by loyalty. They were held together by profit. And nothing destroyed loyalty faster than stolen money. I used information I had collected before my identity was exposed. Not illegally, not by breaking into systems. Just information I already knew from my undercover operation. A company name, a transaction route, a hidden account number, a transfer Ryan thought nobody noticed. Ryan had been stealing from Victor. Small amounts, carefully, enough that Victor wouldn't notice immediately, but enough to prove something. Ryan wasn't just a victim. He was preparing his escape. I sent the information anonymously. No message, no explanation, just proof. A copy of a financial record. Within 3 hours, Victor received it. Victor's reaction was exactly what I expected. The recording came from a hidden surveillance device Marcus placed legally through the investigation. Victor stood inside his office. The paper was on his desk. His expression didn't change. That was what made him dangerous. Anger was predictable. Silence was not. He picked up his phone. "Find out who accessed this account." A pause. Then, "And find Ryan." He put the phone down. He looked at the document again. Then he smiled. Not because he was happy, because he had found a new enemy. The second move was Ryan. Ryan Brooks was different from Victor. Victor was dangerous because he trusted nobody. Ryan was dangerous because he convinced everyone to trust him. But there was one thing people like Ryan always did. They prepared an escape route. I knew Ryan, not personally, but professionally. People like him always kept insurance. A hidden account, a backup passport, a secret recording, something they could use when everything collapsed. And I was right. Marcus found the information through financial monitoring. Ryan had another phone, hidden from Claire, hidden from Victor. Inside that phone were copies of conversations between him and Claire. A weapon Ryan never intended to use unless he needed to save himself. Which meant eventually, he would use it. I didn't have to force him. I only needed to make him afraid. The third move was Claire. This one was harder. Not because she was innocent, but because she was the person I knew best. For 7 years, I had slept beside her. I knew how she thought. I knew what she feared. Not prison. Not losing money. Not even losing Ryan. Claire Carter feared losing control. So I gave her something she couldn't control. A question. A question that had haunted me since the warehouse. Why did you reject my call? The message was simple. No threats, no accusations, just 5 words. Why did you let me die? I sent it through an old encrypted channel. One that should have been inactive. One only senior FBI personnel knew existed. Then I waited. Claire saw the message at 2:13 a.m. She was alone in her office. The same office where she had rewritten my death report. The same place where she erased evidence. At first, she thought it was impossible. Then she read it again. Her face changed. Not fear. Not immediately. Denial. She typed a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Because she knew one thing. If Ethan was alive, everything she had done could be exposed. She opened my case file. Again. Then she stopped. Because she realized something. She had already made this mistake once. Every time she tried to hide the truth, she created another record, another trace, another piece of evidence. But fear was stronger than logic. So she did it anyway. She accessed the sealed operation archive, searching, looking for proof, looking for confirmation, looking for a way to know if the dead man was really alive. And Marcus recorded everything. That night, I watched Claire sitting alone in her office, the woman who once promised to protect me, the woman who signed my death report, the woman who cried at my funeral. Now she was terrified, not because she missed me, not completely. She was terrified because the consequences were finally approaching. Marcus looked at the screen. Do you feel better? I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't. Seeing Claire afraid didn't heal anything. It didn't erase the warehouse. It didn't erase the rejected emergency call. It didn't erase the moment I realized my wife had chosen another man over my life. Marcus closed the laptop. What's next? I looked at the 3 names on the board. Victor, Ryan, Claire. They will start fighting. How do you know? I looked at him. Because people who commit crimes together don't trust each other. And when they think they're about to lose everything, they don't protect each other. They protect themselves. Marcus nodded. Then my phone received a notification. A photo. No sender. No number. Just an image. It was Claire, entering the FBI archive room. The same room where she first downloaded my file. Under the photo was one sentence. Not from me. Not from Marcus. Someone else had sent it. Someone who knew more than we expected. The message read, I know what she did. I stared at the screen. Because suddenly, I wasn't the only person watching Claire Carter. The most dangerous moment in any criminal organization is not when the police arrive. It is when everyone realizes they might be the one sacrificed. For years, Victor Moretti built his empire on fear. His people obeyed him because they believed he was untouchable. Ryan Brooks survived because he convinced everyone he was useful. And Claire Carter. Claire survived because she believed she was smarter than everyone in the room. But fear changes people. Fear removes loyalty. Fear forces people to reveal who they really are. And now, all 3 of them were afraid, because the dead man was still watching. 3 days after I sent the message to Claire, Marcus placed a new file in front of me. Ryan moved. I looked up. Where? Not physically. Marcus tapped the folder. Financially. Inside were several reports, new accounts, new transactions, passport application, private flight inquiry. Ryan was preparing to disappear. Exactly as I expected. People like Ryan Brooks never waited until the fire reached them. They left before anyone smelled smoke. He knows Victor suspects him, Marcus said. I looked at the documents. No, Marcus frowned. No, Ryan doesn't think Victor suspects him. I pointed at the records. He knows. Marcus studied me. How? Because Ryan is not preparing to escape from Victor. I looked at the screen. He is preparing to escape from everyone. Ryan had always been good at pretending. That was what made him dangerous. He didn't threaten people. He didn't force them. He made them feel like helping him was their own idea. That was how he controlled Claire. He never told her, destroy your marriage. He said, Ethan doesn't choose you anymore. He never told her, steal FBI information. He said, you're the only person who can save me. and Claire wanted to believe him, because believing him was easier than admitting the truth. But Ryan had one weakness. He loved himself more than anyone else, including Claire, especially Claire. Marcus showed me the next recording. It was from a security camera outside a hotel. Ryan walked into the lobby. 20 minutes later, he walked out, but he wasn't alone. A man followed him, a financial consultant, someone connected to offshore accounts. Ryan is moving money, Marcus said. I watched the footage carefully. Not money. Marcus looked at me. What? Insurance. Ryan wasn't moving money because he wanted to get rich. He was moving money because he knew everything was collapsing. The accounts, the passports, the private flight. He was building a way out. And when Ryan built an escape route, he always needed someone else to take the fall. The next person to move was Claire. She found Ryan that night. Marcus obtained the audio through a court-approved monitoring operation connected to the corruption investigation. The conversation lasted 17 minutes. But those 17 minutes told me everything. Claire entered the room angry. Not heartbroken. Not emotional. Angry. How many copies do you have? Ryan looked confused. Copies of what? Don't lie to me. Her voice was cold. The recordings. Silence. Then Ryan laughed. A small laugh. The kind people make when they realize someone has finally noticed the truth. Claire, you really think I would keep nothing? That sentence changed everything, because Claire finally understood. She wasn't the only person keeping secrets. Ryan had been preparing for the day she became a problem. You recorded us? Claire asked. I protected myself. Ryan answered. There's a difference. I watched the recording again, not because I enjoyed seeing her suffer. I didn't, but because this was the moment Claire finally saw Ryan clearly. Not as the man who needed saving, not as the person from her past, but as someone who had always been protecting himself first. You promised me you loved me. Claire's voice became quieter. Ryan sighed. Don't do this. Do what? Turn this into a relationship conversation. A pause. Then Ryan said, we have bigger problems. That was Ryan. Even when the woman who destroyed her life for him was standing in front of him, he was thinking about himself. Claire asked, if everything falls apart, what happens to me? Ryan didn't answer immediately. That hesitation said more than words. Finally, we both made choices. Claire went silent. Then, no. Her voice shook. You made choices. You convinced me. Ryan didn't argue, because he knew she was right, but he also knew something else. Knowing the truth didn't make him loyal. That same night, Victor received another piece of information. A false lead. One Marcus and I carefully prepared. It suggested Ryan was planning to exchange Victor's private financial records for federal protection. Not enough to trigger immediate action, just enough to create suspicion. Victor didn't react immediately. That was the dangerous thing about him. He waited. He watched. He calculated. Then he called one person, Ryan. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, Victor already knew. Ryan was afraid, and afraid people made mistakes. Meanwhile, Claire tried another approach. She contacted the Internal Investigation Division. Not to confess. Not yet. She wasn't ready for that. She gave them a carefully prepared statement. I believe there may have been a compromise during Ethan Carter's operation. Marcus played the recording for me. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I expected. Claire was still trying to control the situation. Even now, even after everything, she wasn't saying, I betrayed my husband. She was saying, there may have been a compromise. She wasn't admitting guilt. She was managing damage. Marcus looked at me. She still thinks she can survive this. I stared at the recording. Because she still thinks this is a mistake. A pause. But it wasn't. That night, I made my final move before the airport. Not a threat. Not a warning. Just information. Ryan received an anonymous message. 3 words. Victor knows everything. Claire received a different message. A photograph. Ryan entering a private aviation office. Underneath it, he's leaving. Neither message was a lie. That was the important part. A good trap doesn't need fake information. It only needs the right information at the right time. 2 hours later, Ryan made a phone call. Not to Claire, not to Victor, to a lawyer. He wanted immunity. He wanted protection. He wanted to trade everything he knew for his own freedom. Exactly as planned. But there was something I didn't expect. The lawyer asked one question. Do you have proof Claire Carter participated? Ryan answered immediately. Yes. Marcus looked at me. He's going to betray her. I looked at the screen. No. I corrected him. He's going to survive. Because people like Ryan never betrayed others. They simply chose themselves. Every single time. The next morning, Claire left her house carrying a small bag. Inside were the things she once used to protect her career. Encrypted devices, operation records, backup communications, evidence she thought could save her. Now, those same things would destroy her. Marcus looked at the surveillance footage. Where is she going? I watched the car disappear into traffic. To find Ryan. And Ryan. I looked at the flight information. To leave. Marcus was silent. Then he understood. 3 people. 3 fears. 1 location. A private airport outside the city. They're all going there. I nodded. Because that was the moment I had been waiting for. Not revenge. Not punishment. Evidence. Real evidence. The kind that would survive a courtroom. The next message came from Marcus. A simple update. Ryan has the ledger. My eyes narrowed. Victor's entire organization. Years of criminal activity. All recorded in one place. Then another message appeared. Victor's men are approaching the airport. A third notification. Claire arrived. I stared at the 3 names on the screen. Victor Moretti, Ryan Brooks, Claire Carter. For months, they had worked together to destroy me. Now, they were walking into the same place, carrying the evidence that would destroy them. I closed the laptop, and for the first time since the warehouse, I allowed myself to think one thing. The dead man was finally ready to come home. The dead have one final advantage. They are underestimated. People mourn them. People forget them. People stop preparing for them. That was why I stayed dead for so long. Because the moment Ethan Carter came back, everyone would stop making mistakes. And I needed them to keep making mistakes. The private airport was almost empty after midnight. That was exactly why Ryan chose it. No reporters, no witnesses, no questions, just a private runway, a waiting aircraft, and enough money to disappear forever. The kind of place people went when they knew they had run out of options. Marcus watched the surveillance screen beside me. Ryan arrived 8 minutes ago. I looked at the monitor. Ryan stepped out of a black SUV. He carried a small leather briefcase. The ledger was inside. The one thing Victor Moretti had spent years protecting. The one thing that could destroy his entire organization. He actually stole it, Marcus said. I nodded. Because Ryan believes he can negotiate with anyone. Marcus looked at me. And can he? I watched Ryan walk toward the aircraft. No. Why? Because he still doesn't understand the difference between information and control. I paused. Victor doesn't need the ledger to know Ryan betrayed him. Ryan stood beside the private jet. His phone kept vibrating. He ignored every call. Victor, Claire, unknown numbers. Everyone was trying to reach him. Everyone except the one person he actually cared about. Himself. The same pattern. The same mistake. Ryan always believed he was the smartest person in the room. Until he realized everyone else had been watching him too. Claire arrived 5 minutes later. Her car stopped at the entrance of the runway. She got out quickly. For the first time since I knew her, she looked uncertain, not confident, not controlled, not like the FBI supervisor who could command an entire operation. Just a woman who finally realized she had lost control. She walked toward Ryan. What did you take? Ryan turned around. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ryan smiled. A small, tired smile. I knew you would come. Claire's expression changed. You planned this. No. Ryan shook his head. I planned to survive. The words hit her harder than an insult. Because they were true. Ryan had never planned a future with her. Only an escape. Where is the recording? Claire asked. Ryan looked at her. What recording? Don't do this. Her voice became colder. The one where you recorded everything. Ryan sighed. Claire, you really thought I wouldn't notice. Silence. Then Ryan opened the briefcase. Not the ledger. A small phone. A backup device. I have copies. Claire stared at it. You recorded me. Ryan smiled bitterly. I recorded everyone. Why? Because that's how people like us survive. Claire stepped back. And for the first time, she understood. She had betrayed Ethan because she believed Ryan was the person who needed saving. But Ryan had never needed saving. He had only needed protection. A vehicle entered the runway. The headlights cut through the darkness. Victor Moretti had arrived. His men surrounded the area. Ryan froze. Claire turned around. Victor stepped out slowly. No anger. No shouting. Just disappointment. That was more frightening. You were going to leave. Ryan swallowed. Victor, don't. Victor raised his hand. I don't want explanations. He looked at the briefcase. The ledger. Ryan tightened his grip. I can make a deal. Victor almost laughed. A deal? You think the government will protect you? Ryan didn't answer, because he knew the answer. Victor looked at Claire, then back at Ryan. This is why I never trusted either of you. Claire's face turned pale. You knew. Victor smiled. I knew someone would betray me. He looked at Ryan. I just wanted to see who would be first. The runway became silent. 3 people, 3 lies, 3 different versions of the truth. Ryan pointed at Claire. She started this. Claire immediately turned toward him. Excuse me. You gave me the information. Ryan shouted. You accessed the files. Claire's expression changed. And you manipulated me. You used me. Ryan laughed. No. He stepped closer. You wanted to believe me. That sentence destroyed whatever was left between them. Because it was cruel. But it was also true. Victor raised his weapon. The moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Everyone reached for survival. Ryan moved first. Claire stepped back. Victor's men prepared to fire. And then, the entire runway was flooded with blue and red lights. Vehicles surrounded the airport. Federal agents appeared from every direction. A voice came through the speakers. Victor Moretti, you are surrounded. Drop your weapons. Everyone froze. Ryan looked around. Confusion replaced fear. Claire stared at the FBI tactical team. No, she whispered, because she understood something. Someone had known. Someone had planned this. Someone had been waiting. The armored vehicle door opened. A man stepped out. Black tactical vest. FBI identification. A familiar face. A face that 3 people had already buried. The entire world stopped for Claire, because the dead man was standing in front of her. Alive. Ethan Carter. Ryan's mouth opened. No. Victor's expression finally changed. Not fear. Recognition. He understood. The one person he had underestimated was the person who had controlled everything from the beginning. Claire couldn't move. She stared at me like she was looking at a ghost. Ethan. Her voice broke. You. She couldn't finish. I walked toward them. Slowly. Calmly. Because unlike them, I didn't need to pretend anymore. Claire took 1 step forward. I thought you were dead. I looked at her. I know. Her eyes filled with tears. I can explain. I stopped. For 7 years. That sentence would have made me listen. That night in the warehouse. It would have destroyed me. But now, it meant nothing. A tactical agent approached her. She looked at me. I am your wife. I looked at the badge on her chest. Then at the evidence bag in my hand. No, I said quietly. Right now, you're a suspect. The agent placed handcuffs around her wrists. And for the first time, Claire Carter had no authority, no command, no control. Ryan immediately changed. He always did. Wait, he shouted. I can cooperate. Everyone looked at him. I have the ledger. I have evidence against Victor. I can testify. Marcus looked at me, almost disappointed. He's already choosing himself. I nodded. That was never going to change. Victor looked at Ryan, then laughed. A cold, empty laugh. You really thought they would protect you? Ryan lowered his head, because he finally understood. He had spent his entire life betraying people before they could betray him. But eventually, everyone runs out of people to sacrifice. As Claire was taken toward the vehicle, she stopped. She looked back at me. 1,000 emotions crossed her face. Anger, pain, regret, fear. Finally, she asked, "When did you start hating me?" I looked at her for a long moment, then answered, "I didn't." She looked surprised. "I didn't have time to hate you." I stepped closer. "I was too busy making sure you could never do this to anyone else." Her eyes lowered, and for the first time, she had nothing to say. That night, Victor Moretti's empire ended. The man who controlled fear for decades was finally afraid. The woman who controlled my career lost everything she built. The man who destroyed my marriage traded everyone for a chance at freedom. But the real victory wasn't their arrest. It wasn't the handcuffs. It wasn't watching them fall. The real victory was knowing the truth survived. The truth they tried to bury. The truth they thought died with me. Marcus stood beside me as the agents escorted them away. "Are you ready?" I looked at the sunrise beginning behind the airport. For months, I had lived as a dead man. Now, Ethan Carter was alive again. But the story wasn't over, because surviving was only the first part. The next step was making them answer for everything they did. The strange thing about justice is that it doesn't arrive with anger. It doesn't need shouting. It doesn't need revenge. It simply waits. It waits until every lie has nowhere left to hide. For months, Victor Moretti believed fear would protect him. Ryan Brooks believed manipulation would save him. And Claire Carter believed she could control the consequences of every decision she made. But eventually, everyone has to face the choices they made when they thought nobody was watching. The courtroom was silent. Not the kind of silence caused by respect. The kind caused by anticipation. Everyone in that room knew this wasn't just another criminal trial. It was the trial of a woman who had spent 7 years wearing 2 identities. A federal supervisor, and the person who destroyed the man closest to her. Claire sat across the courtroom. She looked different. Not weaker, not broken, just smaller. For years, she had walked into rooms and people stood up. Agents listened. Executives respected her. Enemies feared her. But today, no one looked at her as a commander. They looked at her as a defendant. The prosecutor placed the first evidence file on the table. Access records from the FBI classified system. The screen behind him showed the timestamps. Claire Carter, her credentials, her authorization, her access to Ethan Carter's undercover file. The courtroom remained quiet. The prosecutor continued. These records show that Deputy Director Claire Carter accessed information related to an active undercover operation. Claire's lawyer immediately stood. My client accessed those files because she was involved in supervising the operation. A reasonable explanation, almost believable, until the next piece of evidence appeared. Except she downloaded information that was outside her operational requirements. The prosecutor changed the screen. My undercover identity, my alias, my extraction plan, my emergency protocols, everything Victor later used against me. Claire looked down. For a moment, I almost remembered the woman I married. The woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during late-night movies. The woman who once told me, "No matter what happens, I will always bring you home." But that memory disappeared quickly, because promises mean nothing when actions prove the opposite. The prosecutor continued. Next evidence. A recording played. Ryan's voice filled the courtroom. "Claire, I need you to understand something. Once Ethan is gone, there is no going back." A younger version of Claire answered, "I know." The entire courtroom froze. Her lawyer immediately objected, but the judge allowed the recording, because this was not a private conversation about feelings. It was evidence. Evidence of knowledge. Evidence of intent. Evidence of choice. Ryan's voice continued. "If they find out Mason Reed is Ethan Carter, he won't survive." A pause. Then Claire answered, "Just make sure Victor doesn't hurt him." That sentence was the last thing she held on to. Her excuse, her defense, her way of pretending she never wanted me dead. But the prosecutor didn't stop there. He played another recording. The one after she refused my emergency call. Ryan asked, "Are you sure this won't come back to you?" Claire answered, I can handle it. For words. For words that destroyed every excuse she had. Because she knew. She understood the risk. And she still continued. The prosecutor looked at the jury. This was not one mistake. This was not one emotional decision. This was a series of deliberate choices. He placed another file down. She accessed classified information. She provided confidential operational details. She altered official records. She interfered with extraction procedures. She attempted to conceal her actions afterward. Then he looked toward Claire. The defendant was not unaware of the danger. She was trained to understand it. That was when Marcus walked forward. He placed the final piece of evidence on the table. A training video, Claire's own voice. 7 years earlier, a younger Claire stood inside an FBI training room. Confident, professional, certain. A slide behind her showed Undercover Identity Protection Protocols. Her own voice echoed through the courtroom. An undercover identity is not information. It is a life. Anyone who exposes it understands they are placing an agent in immediate danger. The video stopped. Nobody spoke, because everyone understood. The person who destroyed Ethan Carter's life was the person who had taught others how to protect it. Claire finally looked at me, not as an agent, not as a witness, as her husband. Her eyes were red. Ethan. The judge allowed a brief pause. Claire's voice shook. I never wanted you to die. The courtroom became silent. I looked at her, and for a second, I saw the woman I loved. Then I saw the warehouse, the locked door, the emergency call, the silence after she rejected me. And I remembered, love could explain why someone made a mistake, but it could never erase what they chose to do afterward. After the hearing, Claire was allowed one final statement. She stood up. I lost myself. I made choices because I thought I could fix everything. I thought I could protect everyone. A pause. Then she looked at me. I thought you would understand. I stared at her, and finally answered, that was your biggest mistake. She looked confused. You thought I was angry because you chose Ryan. I shook my head. No, I was hurt because you chose yourself. The words hit harder than any accusation. Because they were true. Ryan chose himself. Victor chose himself. And Claire. Claire chose herself every single time she had a chance to stop. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Victor Moretti. Life imprisonment. No possibility of parole. Ryan Brooks. Multiple convictions. His cooperation reduced some charges, but not enough to save him. He spent the rest of his life paying for the empire he helped build. And Claire Carter, the woman who once commanded hundreds of agents, lost everything. Her badge, her career, her reputation, her freedom. Months later, I visited her once. Not because I missed her. Not because I wanted closure. Because some endings need to be spoken. The glass separated us. Claire looked older, tired. I still think about that night. I said nothing. The warehouse. My phone. The moment I rejected your call. Her eyes filled with tears. I should have answered. I looked at her. Yes, that was all. Because sometimes the hardest truth is also the simplest. She whispered, do you hate me? I thought about that question for a long time. Then I answered, no. Her expression changed, almost hopeful. But I continued, I don't hate you. I just don't know you anymore. The hope disappeared. You were my wife. I looked at the woman behind the glass. But the person who made those choices was someone I never knew. I left the prison without looking back. For years, I thought revenge would make me whole. Didn't. Justice didn't erase what happened. It didn't return the trust one lost. It didn't undo the night I almost died. But it gave me something more important. A future. A year later, I stood in front of a new group of FBI undercover agents. Young faces, nervous eyes, people about to enter a world where trust could save their lives, or destroy them. I looked at them and said, trust your team, trust your training, but never forget. I paused. Your life should never depend on one person's choice. The room was silent. Then the briefing ended. I walked outside. The sunlight hit my face. For a long time, I had lived as a dead man, a ghost, a name people whispered about. But now, Ethan Carter was alive. Not because I survived. Not because my enemies fell. Because I finally understood something. The people who betray you can take almost everything. Your trust, your past, your belief in others. But they cannot take the one thing that matters most. The choice of who you become afterward. I walked forward, and this time, I didn't look back.